We're going to get started. The main purpose of this meeting is to try to provide you all with an overview of the Neighborhoods Ready for School program. It's kind of a brand new strategy for First Five, so we wanted to just give that content and have offer the opportunity for you all to ask questions of us at the end of the presentation. Then we're also going to briefly go through the letter of intent, which is due actually on Friday. And so there's a lot less information that needs to be provided in the letter of intent. And so I'm going to try to, as I go through that overview, tell you kind of what is part of the LOI and what hold off to the RFP. But we wanted to give you enough information so that you can think about the whole program, so not just the letter of intent today. And so my name is Lisa Erickson, and I've been with First Five for quite a long time. I'm not going to date myself. And I know many of you here, and I'm working to help coordinate this Neighborhoods Ready for School program. So nice to meet y'all. Good to see you. And I'm going to, Carla, you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning. I'm Carla King, your Senior Administrator, and this strategy fits under my purview. So welcome.
And then I'm going to introduce you to Janice Berger, who's our CEO. Just going to get a little introduction.
Good morning. Is your microphone on? Yes. So I'm Janice Berger. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the CEO of First Five Alameda County, and I'm really, really excited about this initiative. And it really it's the evolution of First Five over the past 20 years, and also the evolution of the early childhood field, looking at child development and children and families as both a poverty reduction strategy and also addressing the issues of children living in poverty having the worst outcomes. So really trying to address it from both sides. Children live in their communities and with their families, and so we're looking at broadening our work and looking at children in the context of their communities, and hence this RFP, which we're excited about, and being able to innovate and really look at different strategies and different approaches for working with families with young kids and addressing all of their needs, whether they're financial, workforce, child development, parent education, from a very holistic viewpoint. Also, really, there's so much great work going on in the community. So how can we leverage that and bring that together with some infrastructure and some blue support to make that happen and to strengthen our communities and children and families? So we're excited about this. We hope you are. We really look forward to reading the LOIs and moving forward in the process. And I'm going to turn it over to Kristen Spanos.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So I'm Kristen Spanos. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for First Five. And both Janice and I wanted to be here. Wanted to welcome everyone to our lovely building, but also, number two, really to show the level of commitment and investment that leadership has in this RFP. We're all really excited. It actually we have to adopt a strategic plan every 4 years, and so in February our commission adopted our current strategic plan, and this is one of the new strategies actually tied to that strategic plan. And as Janice indicated, there's been a commitment to place-based work here at First Five, and this really is the evolution of that. In our strategic planning process, we interviewed over 40 stakeholders, some 400 surveys came in, we did focus groups with parents, and some of the themes that came back were folks want an easier, kind of more aligned, coordinated system to access services and resources for families and for children. And so this really is our attempt to try to do that, to put some funding behind that and help to set up some systems within neighborhoods. And then within our strategic plan, we have a commitment, an articulated commitment to equity. And so this is a nod saying, to Janice's point, kids grow up within families and they grow up within neighborhoods. And we wanted to continue our work related to place-based and put some money and infrastructure behind that, and hoping really that it becomes a proof of concept for other systems and funders when they're thinking about investing in some of our neighborhoods and communities within the county. So we're really excited at this. We're going to learn a lot. The intent is we're going to do an LOI, and out of the LOI there'll be 8 applicants that can go forward, and then there'll be an application process. And we're really invested in this process and strategy going forward. And so Carla and Lisa put together a great PowerPoint presentation. Staff has been working really hard on it. Go through the details. I hope to ask all the questions that may come to mind, and we will do our best to try to answer them. And really welcome you here at First Five. So thanks.
That's my little, it's still on here. I feel like a talk show host for this thing. And I have a blazer on, so I'm very official today. I don't usually dress this, professional. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just the overview of how this work came to be for the Neighborhoods Ready for Schools. So as Janice and Kristen mentioned, we really wanted to focus on equity, really targeting particular neighborhoods, and Carla's going to talk a little bit about what those priority neighborhoods are later. And that we also wanted to look at the comprehensive needs of families, so trying to set up real one-stop shops in neighborhoods to look at all the needs, including basic needs for families. And additionally, policy and systems change, so not just services, but thinking about how we can really build on policy and systems change, but having that be community-driven. So getting really the barriers, the challenges that are happening in communities, and having a really intentional way of bringing that up to the policymakers and the different tables that are happening in the county, in the state, and even at the federal level around what's really impacting communities. Because sometimes, as some of you might know, the policy sometimes just happens up here, and it's a little bit out of touch with what's happening in communities. So we're really trying to bridge that connection between communities and policy. And this work has also been, we've learned a lot. We have been doing some place-based work at First Five for pretty much since we began. We weren't calling it place-based, but we've always worked in some of these zip codes that we're going to be talking about. And then we've also had intentional strategies in the past around place-based work, like a federal grant called Project Launch, that some of you might have heard about. And we've also worked very closely with Hayward Promise Neighborhoods. We've worked a lot in East Oakland, in Castlemont, and also through the Oakland Unified School District to do some of this work. So this model has really been, it's based on what we've learned. So it's already community driven, like what we developed here is based on what we've heard from the community and what's needed. And so some of the main components that we've been working on or what we want to focus on is building a network. So a network of early childhood services and community supports. And what we mean by a network is that oftentimes providers are out there delivering services, but they might not know each other. So it's really trying to build relationships among providers in a particular neighborhood. We're also trying to align resources. So making sure that providers know, what's happening, if there's some redundancy in resources or services, maybe dealing with that redundancy. And there might be an opportunity if there's a literacy approach happening at the elementary school, for instance, that maybe the play groups and the literacy groups are learning about that literacy approach as well. So aligning. And also increasing referrals. So if you know more about what's happening in the community, you'll be able to refer your families to those services and programs within their neighborhood. So it's that network piece. And also places. So what we've learned from families in doing this work is that there often aren't actual infrastructure, places in our neighborhoods for families to gather, to play, safe indoor places. Also for providers to meet and have collaborative meetings. You have places like here in Alameda for all of us to meet, but we want more places like this out in the neighborhood. And coordination. So again, as I mentioned before, that one-stop shop. So trying to bring resources together into a particular place so that families with their young kids aren't having to run all around town, taking buses, taxis, whatever they have to do with all their kids in tow to try to get what they need. This tries to bring it together in one place for what families call a one-stop shop. So that when you go out and talk to families, that's how they say it. They say, we want a one-stop shop. So that's what we're trying to do. It might take us a little while to get there, but this is kind of that first, infusion of resources to try to make that happen. And then lastly, this is one of the most important components, is this family leadership and civic engagement. So we really want to build infrastructure and have resources in community to get families very involved in developing these programs. So we'd like for them to be shaping, implementing, planning what is being offered in these neighborhood hubs within the Neighborhoods Ready for School model. So there's these brochures here called the Ripples of Transformation. And this is a kind of how we define what family leadership looks like. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what that is, but this just gives you an idea of how First Five is thinking about family leadership. As you can see, families enter at different places. It involves a lot of different pieces and different ways that families can be involved. And that's here. Let's see. I think, did I also mention that we are going to be walking in your packets? I kind of forgot to go through what's in your packets, but you guys all figured out there is the PowerPoint and the RFP in the packets. So I'll kind of be walking through that RFP today. So that's everything for the overview. I'm going to hand it over to Carl, and she's going to talk a little bit about the funding details.
So in keeping with Lisa's mention about having RFP, really do use it as your research manual, your Bible for this process, because everything that you need to know is included there. And we try to make sure that this PowerPoint sort of walks along the, what's the information in the RFP. So on page 2 is where you'll find the funding details. But the high-level overview of that is that we are going to have a maximum of 4 grants of up to $470,000 each for a 16-month funding period. So that would go from March of 2018 to June of 2019 for the first phase. Again, it's not intended for direct services. You are all in neighborhoods and probably already doing really great work. This is really to try to give funding for pipeline work, for connective tissue work, for building that continuum from cradle to school. So if there are gaps, however, you can use them under that. There's money for planning. Of course, you want to have time to hire and train your staff, to think about your governance structure. So the 16-month period is really a time to do some level setting and to think about how you're going to do this work ongoing. But it is not to fund a number of brand new services, because you're already doing services. It's more like Lisa said, figure out how to have a better, more efficient, more family-friendly, family-focused approach to providing early childhood in the communities that you're thinking about. We are looking at least a 20% match from your collaboratives. Again, First 5 is a declining revenue source. We are very committed to this work and want to invest in this work. We know that over time our funding will decrease, and we want there to be a commitment to this work for the 4 years that we're investing in it, but also beyond. So we want you to come into this process knowing that there's skin in the game for all of us, and we will work with you to find other ways at some point to look at the funding might be available through other interested parties. It is also our hope not to put you through an annual reapplication process. So if you are successful in meeting your deliverables, meeting your benchmarks, working with us, then there would be a process for renewal that will look at your metrics in terms of how we're doing. And if you are doing well, according to what we negotiated in successful negotiating process, then you would be refunded after the 18-19 year. We also will, as I said, be working with you on fund development and sustainability. So that cutting into that, looking at what we already have that you can leverage, what First 5 has in terms of partnerships and relationships that we can help to leverage, and looking at what investments are already in the communities that you're working with to align those resources to make sure that we have the kind of family-friendly service that we want for the families that we're targeting. Okay? So next we're going to talk about eligibility. So it has to be one lead agency. And in talking with several of you, you said that nobody could do this work alone, and you're already in the right frame of mind for thinking that this is a big job. That in order to have the vision that we want to realize, we have to find ways that we come together to think about how we work with the families and the communities that we've identified. But we do need one lead agency as the applicant. So you have to either be a 501c3 or a public agency. I hope you also took note of who's in the room, because if indeed there are folks or there are gaps in your collaborations and partnerships, there's a wealth of expertise and resource in this room. So in some ways we thought about today as being a bit of matchmaking as well. So if you are a lead agency or thinking you will be, but have some holes in your collaboration, you might want to look around and see what's in the room. Or if you're not interested in being a lead agency, but you kind of have a community that you're interested in, or you have someone that has a similar philosophy, then today might be a day to maybe do some networking and think about how you might make some connection. Again, we have to talk to the 20% match, and that's at least. So the minimum match that we are looking for is 20%. We are also looking at your capacity to implement goals and to do the kind of work that would hold the collaboration together in terms of being good at facilitation, good at partnership, good at data sharing, and meeting the very strict requirements that we have as a part of this effort. And then finally, and not the least important, is that we want to see you demonstrate an understanding of and a connection to the community. So being in the community is important, but also we want to see a vision that really aligns with what the folks in those communities say about themselves and what they want for themselves and their children. Okay. Now to the priority neighborhoods. While this is a sizable investment that First Five is making in this initiative, it is not nearly enough for the scale of need that we know is in our county. Our county is broad, our county is diverse, our county is large. And so we have to use some process by which to narrow how we would make our investments. So with the support of our really wonderful data team, I know John is in here somewhere. There he is. John's in the back. From our evaluation and tech team, he and Jake and others looked at 25 variables, and they're listed on page 11 of your RFP that tried to get a sense of how we would determine where we would make our investments. Of those 25 investments, of course, some are risk factors, and others are assets or strengths that we find in these zip codes. And no matter how many ways they ran the numbers or ran the different analyses, these 9 zip codes came up every time. And I'm sure for most of us in the room, it's not a surprise where they are. We're probably already working there. We've been working there historically. And that's actually the problem. We've historically worked in these same neighborhoods. And we still see disparities and gaps and inequities in these 9 neighborhoods. So you are the folks that are going to come in with these new innovative ideas to help us figure out how we're going to crack the code on having better outcomes for young children and families in these kinds of codes. Pivotal place matters. And everything that we read we see on television, we read in our articles, talks about that. In the final 2 paragraphs on page 6, it talks about the research and the documentation that's happening in some of our neighborhoods. And also our equity statement on page 7 on the RFP gives more backup and justification about why we are taking this approach. That we know these are historically marginalized, vulnerable, underserved, under-resourced neighborhoods. And so this is where we want to focus our attention. However, saying that, no one is precluded from applying. If you have a good vision and a good approach, and very collaborative in somewhere that is not in these kinds of codes, we do want you to apply as well. We are going to have a fair process to look at anyone who applies, but want you to know coming in that we have had a systematic analytical way of looking at how we want to look at prioritizing the investment. Okay? And then priority populations. In some ways, the priority zip code speaks to these priority populations, but again, we're looking at, if you look at the school readiness brief, which is in your packet, I think on the left-hand side, we're looking at families who are low and working income families, English language learners, children of color, boys, particularly children with special needs, fathers. This is just a suggested list. We are not saying that you have to check off that I'm working with these 5 folks, therefore I should get maximum consideration. But we all know who the populations are that most need support and help. Again, from an equity lens, think of the places and the people that these funds would do the most, have the most benefit. And that's what we're looking for in terms of priority populations. Okay, Lisa's back.
All right. So now, we're going to talk a bit about what is the model? What's the approach that we're looking for? I'm gonna use the RFP. There's a lot of information in this approach. So I'm gonna be referencing the RFP. And let's see, it starts on page 12. So this is kind of the meat of what we're looking for is in this section here. So again, as Carla mentioned, this funding is really meant to kind of fill gaps and to bring things together. So to give you an example, these are all the components that we're looking for. What you're already doing in neighborhoods, you might, for example, have a lot of early childhood programs and services for number 3. but you might not have a strong family navigation component. So then this funding could be used to bolster that. Or let's say you have all of 1 through 4 here, but you don't really have a lot of partnerships, which that would be hard to do, I think, 1 through 4 without partnerships, but nearly impossible. But let's say you do. This funding could be used to really develop a collaborative. Or maybe you're doing all this, but you don't have a really strong facility, and you're having to go into the Parks and Rec rooms and set stuff up, and then, take it down. And this could provide an actual permanent facility where families can gather and play. So it's really meant to fill gaps. And Carla did mention it's not completely a service, money for services, but it's not, you also can use a little bit of money for services if you need to fill those gaps. So don't think that you can't, let's say you want to provide a parent cafe, you could use some of the monies. If you can't find a partner to come in and do it, you would be able to use money for that purpose. But it is to fill gaps for 1 through 4. And in your LOIs, as she mentioned at this point, you don't have, in the LOI, you're not going to be asked to deliver a whole, approach and everything. That will come later in the RFP. But we do want to see your thinking. So the LOI will walk you through these components, and you can say what you're currently doing. And if you're not doing anything, what you're thinking. What are you planning for that particular component? That's really what we want to see in that LOI. For basically all 6 of these components here. So the first component, number 1 over here on the red, is the family leadership opportunities and civic engagement, which I already talked a little bit about. But this is really trying to, having the resources to identify families, bring them in, have them be involved in planning the programs, implementing the programs, and in some cases, eventually, actually doing their own programs. So developing, they might start as a parent working in a playgroup, then they might end up being a teacher in a playgroup. Or they might start, maybe participating in Abriendo Puertas program, and then maybe being a teacher for that particular evidence-based family education program. So that's number 1. Number 2 is the coordination, navigation, and location of programs and services. So this is really that kind of one-stop shop concept that I was talking about earlier, bringing, correct from the RFP here, developing that user-friendly system for families, so they can come to one place, get what they need, get their staff there to help them navigate systems, so that you're not just saying, okay, family, go call this number, but you're actually following up with a family. You have resources for that. And I know it's not the fault of all the programs that they're not typically able to follow up with families. Oftentimes, funders don't fund that. So this is an opportunity. We're saying, no, we want you to have staff. In some cases, maybe full-time staff, just navigating resources for families and systems. Let's see. Also having staff that are culturally and linguistically responsive to the family and community needs is very important for number 2. Number 3, early childhood programs and services. This is, in some cases you might have, you might be a community development organization that's doing a lot of navigation for families. You might be doing a lot of family leadership, and maybe you don't have a strong early childhood component. This is your opportunity to build that early childhood component. You might be partnering with other early childhood folks in the community, or using some of these funds to develop your own services and programs for early childhood. And I also should mention, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later, but First 5 is going to be doing a lot of capacity building with this grant. So we will help, for folks that don't have a lot of early childhood expertise and background, we will be available to help connect you with partners or help you learn how to develop those programs and services for your sites. And then for the top, lastly is the economic resources and financial supports. And in the RFP, we define or we articulate both having these supports for the neighborhood as well as for families. And so having these economic resources and financial supports for the neighborhoods might look like affordable housing, job training and local hiring, lending programs or small business development. And again, it might not be the site doing these, but you might connect with partners that are doing those programs and services in the neighborhoods. And then also offering those opportunities for families. So again, you might be doing a lot of early childhood programs and services, but you might not be linking families to job training in the neighborhood. So we're hoping that through this comprehensive system, families that are coming into your early childhood programs and services are also getting linked to legal support or job training or health and dental benefits. So that's all. I so badly want to ask for questions right now. I can just see your faces. You're like, I really want to ask, but we're going to wait. So those are the 4 kind of service components up top. And now I'm going to go into the partnership. So this is really, like down here is really that infrastructure and support for all up here up top. All right. So again, as we mentioned, it would be nearly impossible to provide all this for just one agency. So it really is going to require those host organizations to partner with other folks out in the community doing this work. And we're actually requiring that partnership as part of this application. So we're not requiring specific partnerships, but we do list some examples in the RFP of folks you might want to have in your collaborative. But for the LOI and the RFP, we're not requiring who you partner with. Something to keep in mind. And for the letter of commitment and the memorandum of understanding, I should also mention for the LOI, you don't have to have all your letters of commitments and MOUs already done for the LOI, but you need to be thinking of who your partners are at that point. But when you do have to get your letter of commitments and memorandum of understandings, we do want certain elements to be within those agreements. And those are data sharing, and evaluation, and reporting. So making sure that if you bring in subcontractors, your subcontractors know that they need to be sharing data with the host organization. They also might be involved in evaluation. So if we have an outside evaluator, if First 5, for instance, contracts with an outside evaluator, everyone in that collaborative might have to be involved in that evaluation. So they should know that up front. Let's see, and also that there's this philosophy of and kind of approach of continuous quality improvement, which we'll talk a little bit more about when we talk about the results-based accountability. But that the spirit of this is that you're constantly evaluating and learning and adapting what you're doing. And so the subcontractors and your partners should be aware of that approach as well. And then lastly, we would like to see a cross-sector collaborative, which could look like what we're, obviously having communities tell us what that might look like. But some examples that we've done in place-based work in the past, for instance, in Castlemont, we have a community collaborative that brings together all different kinds of providers that meets, it was meeting monthly, now it's meeting quarterly. So that would just be one example of kind of a governance structure, a community collaborative, and that has folks from public health that come. It has the school district was coming for a while. It has community-based organizations. It has parent-run organizations. So all different kinds of folks coming together, community members, family members, and in some cases business. We haven't been that successful in the past at getting business there, but that would be amazing if you could, Infrastructure, okay. So staffing expectation. Like we mentioned, this money can be used to hire infrastructure staff. So typically, funders don't often fund that piece, right? They'll fund like the programming and the services. You can really use this to fund, let's say, a site director, for example. So one component is agency leadership. We want someone there that's really responsible for overseeing everything. So for overseeing the programming, the navigation, the outreach, all these different components, the family leadership and the facilities. So that leadership staff. I should also mention that we're looking for no fewer than 3 full-time equivalent staff. So that's something that's in the RFP. We're also looking for outreach and organizing staff. So we really want folks on the ground, so really doing that on-the-ground outreach. It might be going to laundromats. It might be going to churches to really target your target populations in the community. And then family navigation, which I already talked a little bit about, but someone to really help families navigate through our very complicated public systems. And this has come directly from some of the family-run organizations that we work with, that families really have a difficult time connecting to a lot of our public systems. And this money will hopefully help families navigate. Yeah, helping them fill out forms, helping them understand the steps, and then following up and making sure, did you get what you need? And then closing the case once they get what they need. Ideally, families would be coming back, and participating in families and services. So you would have an opportunity to say, oh, did you have a chance to, follow up with that service provider? Did they call you back? So that kind of work. Let's see. Data tracking, I talked a little bit about the evaluation, data tracking and performance reporting. So having someone, this model will require quite a bit of evaluation, because in order to be sustainable, we have to show that we have strong evaluation results. And so we are putting a lot of resources into evaluation for this model. Some of it might come from First Five. Like I said, we might hire outside evaluators, but you'll need staff to be able to partner with those outside evaluators to track data, to understand the data, to kind of say to your collaborator, okay, this is what we're learning. These programs, aren't really working the way we want them to. We need to change them in this way. So staff to really do that. Okay. And then lastly, administrative support. This is very important. So in order for families to know what's going on in the neighborhood and providers, you need administrative support to help schedule things, help to have a community calendar that might be posted to a website, help develop community events. Families are always asking for neighborhood events and actual just fun stuff going on in their community. In addition to all the services, they want to do stuff. They want to have fun with their neighbors. So that admin support allows for that infrastructure that you need to help plan those community events. All right, so that's all the staffing. Facility and environment. So we have some suggestions in the RFP about what a facility might look like for this work. The ideal facility might have multiple rooms. You might have a room for families and children to play and learn together. Like you might have a place that's set up for a playgroup, for example, that you don't have to always break down, because that can be very laborious and difficult, as many of you know. So it's there all the time for families and children to use for doing that, those play and learning activities. You might also have a space for staff. So not only staff of your organization, but maybe for staff of community partners that are coming in, so your subcontractors, space for that. And then lastly, you might have, an office space for, a separate programming space for families or for providers to gather. So as I mentioned, like we're meeting in this room right now. This is a really big room. You might have a room this big, but you might have a room for doing parent education and meetings and things like parent cafes. And that could be separate from that playroom. Or you might have a room that is kind of a separate private room, like a respite room for families to relax or to receive therapy services while their kids are playing. So ideally, the ideal space might have kind of, would serve many different needs. And again, this money can be used to fund the facilities. So you might have, let's say, the rooms, but maybe you don't have the funding to renovate the space to make it family friendly. And then lastly, the budget and the match. As Carla mentioned, we're requiring at least a 20% match, and then the First Five contribution will decrease by year 4. And I'll talk a little more about this in the capacity building section, but First Five is also going to be partnering very closely with agencies to help with sustainability and fund development. So it's not like we're just going to give the money out there and say, have fun, we're going to take money out gradually, but we really will be partnering with systems and doing that policy work to hopefully sustain this model. So capacity building opportunities. So grantees working on this model will be working very closely with First Five. And so some of the things that First Five is going to be requiring, or one of the things that First Five will be requiring is this learning community. So we will be developing a learning community where we'll be bringing together all 4 of the grantees to learn from each other, network, and also receive training and professional development. We're not saying what that's going to be at this point because we don't actually know yet. We know that we want you to work on results-based accountability, fund development, sustainability. Those are some of the things we do know, but we really do want this to be community-driven. So this learning community will actually get from you what you need, and then that will feed into the learning community. So we will develop it based on community need. The other thing, and this is very important, we do hope to have these programs the neighborhoods really integrate very intentionally with first 5 strategies. Now I'll give some examples of some of those first 5 strategies that many of you already probably are aware of. But one would be quality early care and education. So as you know, in some of these neighborhoods, there's lots of family childcare providers in the neighborhoods, or lots of family-friended neighbor providers, which means aunties, grandmas, friends providing care for children in the neighborhood. So we would like and First 5 can help with bringing those family child providers and FFM providers potentially into the neighborhood collaborative to receive professional development, to understand what kinds of services are available, so they're not out there totally isolated on their own. So that might just be one example of a way to integrate with a quality early care and education program. We also have an early ID and child development, or there's Deb over there. Hi Deb. Deb from Help Me Grow. So Help Me Grow helps a lot with early ID, so developmental screening and child development, so helping families learn more about child development. So we hope to partner with these neighborhoods to help develop a plan how you would bring those early ID programs and services into these collaboratives in the neighborhoods. Sorry, look at my, I have to remember. Oh, fatherhood. Kevin, over there. There's Kevin. So we hope that this might offer an opportunity to develop actual fatherhood-specific programming. So maybe father support groups, maybe a father playgroup. I don't know, Kevin, any ideas that you could just shout out?
We'll have different opportunities coming up as a result of the, our expansion. So we'll have a fatherhood partnership that you can be part of. We have the Fathers for Learning community that you can be a part of. And then we offer TA to agencies who are starting father-specific programming, like Lisa said.
So another example. Let's see. And then also home visiting programs. So there's a lot of home visiting going out there in the neighborhoods. Does everyone know what home visiting is, kind of? So the home visiting programs that public health funds are working with moms prenatal as well as new moms to help them get what they need in the community. So we would help these neighborhood programs link with the home visiting programs as well. That could be another example. But again, we're not dictating exactly what this integration might look like. We're going to learn more about what your neighborhood needs and develop a plan for how to integrate these programs and services for what you're doing. And then we are going to offer a lot of technical assistance. There might be host organizations that have not had a lot of experience with subcontracting. So First 5 can help those host organizations develop contracts and work with subcontractors, for example. We might help you develop a collaborative. I've done a little bit of support myself with that, with developing collaboratives in Oakland. How might you bring providers together? It's tough sometimes to come up with that agenda of how do you build relationships? What kinds of activities do you do with providers to bring them together? That's something that First 5 can offer us support. And also, like I mentioned before, how do you do programs and services? Like, if you need help developing a playgroup, we're here to help support that as well. Results-based accountability. I'm not going to go into too much depth into results-based accountability today because there will be opportunities to learn more about that. But this is really our evaluation framework, and there is some information in your RFP that outlines what RBA, sometimes you'll hear it out in the community, what that acronym, it's called RBA, is what that looks like. And this is the framework that we're going to be using to evaluate this model. So you would be required to participate in what we call turn the curve discussions, which basically means, are you turning the curve? Is this really having an impact on children's school readiness in your neighborhood? This is actually meant to make evaluation much more user-friendly for the community and for providers. And in the dream vision, you might actually even be bringing the community in to have these conversations. What do you all think? Are we really turning the curve? Is this working for families? So we're going to help with that process of learning results-based accountability. And lastly, as I mentioned, fundraising and sustainability. This is going to be a really big component. We'll be working with those public systems to educate them about what's happening in the community, trying to really leverage other resources, both philanthropic and public resources for this initiative. I think that's it. Did I miss anything? Okay, cool. Let's see what's next. Oh, that's you, right? Okay. I need a glass of water.
I just want to thank you guys because I'm seeing your faces. You are ready to go with the questions. We're almost there, so hold on a bit. We're almost there. Funding decisions. Actually, before I get to that, there's also 2 copies of our strategic plan on the tables. I know you all read them already and have it memorized, but just in case you need a refresher, more information about our 10 strategies that are in the plan. And again, like they said, we're not dictating that you do a laundry list that you're going to want to integrate with every strategy, but at least knowing when you're thinking about your vision for your community and what the needs might be, where those might then align or bump up against what First Five is already doing, what our content expertise is, and how we could possibly be working with you around TA and capacity building. So take a copy, it's also on our website. The other thing about capacity building, before I get to the funding decisions, is that we also are going to be turning to our successful applicants around looking at some potential policy implications. When you are seeing things happening in your community, either administrative policies, funding policies of what things are or are not paid for, as we find possibly new innovative emerging strategies and should they be paid for, we want to be in those kind of conversations with you. So when we think about both sustainability and fund development, a lot of that might happen on the policy front. And I think having that aligned with parent leadership development, of having a very strong, articulate, trained and supported parent community contingent who can also align with us around policy conversations can be quite powerful. So there's lots that we can do together around the capacity building piece. Okay, 2 funding decisions. 2-step process. For the LOI, you're here today, thank you. And by Friday at 5 o'clock, we need you to send that LOI in. 5 o'clock. We would hate for somebody to have 5:01, 5:02, and we have to do like, oh. So give yourself plenty of time to make sure that we have it. The email address is here. It's in the RFP. It's on the website. 5 o'clock this Friday, the 20th. Then there will be an internal review process. So we have a staff-led, cross-disciplinary review team who will look at the LOIs that we receive on Friday. And by the 27th, we will complete that review process internally. For those up to 8 that are successful, we will be notified by Monday, November 6th. And from then, November 6th through December 22nd, that's when the RFP would be due. Okay, we got those dates? All in the timeline, too, on page 3 and 4.
All these dates are
Circle those dates, put them in your smartphones, on your Outlook, wherever else, that those dates are really important. What we also think is going to be important is that for those who are successful, again, we will also do site visits. So while the applications and LOI is important, if you are successful in getting to the RFP stage, we want to be able to come out and lay eyes on what it is you say you are doing. So there'll be more information after we get to that stage. But we wanted to be very intentional about how we review the work that you submit to us and how we take the time to really evaluate and assess how successful we think your application can be. Then after the folks who are successful in the community review panel, those up to 8 will be by a community review, so we'll have external and internal reviewers. There will be a recommendation made to leadership, our agency leadership team, and then the agency leadership team will make a recommendation to our commission for its February 2018 meeting. And then those who are successfully approved by our commission will then get into the negotiation phase in March of 2018. Okay. Also important, please look at the page totals. We have in parentheses what we think each response should be. So it's roughly 5.5 pages, but look at each of those questions, and in parentheses where it says how much you should be writing or giving to us, make sure that you conform to those as well. Okay? Home stretch. Letter of intent checklist. Please make sure that if you're not using Word or you don't use a PC, that you give us an editable format of some kind that we can go in and we need to tweak or take a look at, but there's something that we can actually interact with. Single line spacing, 12-point font, no cheating, 1-inch margins, and then again that you submit it to the email address here by this Friday, 5 o'clock. Okay?